good time to be able to now transition to our premier storyteller. I met Bill this summer, 4th of July, and I don't read military books. I don't like battle. I love history, and I like to read about what happened with the people. I just don't want to know about the battles. But he was so interesting that I bought the book the next day and started reading it, and it was a page turner. It was everything you said. Some of you know the book Red Badge of Courage. To me, that's like one of the most extraordinary books ever written, because you can, all of your senses are engaged in that story. You can smell it, you can see it, you can hear it, you can touch it, you can taste it. And I found his book on full automatic surviving 13 months in Vietnam is that. So I think you tell your story even better. I saw somebody holding the Gary Sinise photograph of U.S. Veterans Buried. Could you hold that up? This is August 2022. Gary Sinise on the cover, and Bill's article on how he started writing a story to help himself with PTSD is on page, what, 95?
98? I think it's 98.
98.
And there's also additional copies that I brought that are right on the counter, so anybody who would like to read the article, it actually, what it is, it's an article that I thought was really important, because people coming back from the service, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about was my dad. When he came home from World War II, I mean, he clammed up. Nobody, anybody who walked up to him said, hey, what'd you do, or what happened? He wouldn't open up at all. My uncle happened to be when a friend of his dropped in that was in the same unit. And he started talking to this gentleman, his name was Summers, and they were talking, and my uncle was able to find out that he was in the Battle of the Bulge, that he was born in 22, which meant that he was able to join, but towards the end of the war, like 44 and 45. And of course, I served 13 months in Vietnam, and that was like a lifetime, so I can't even imagine what he went through. So what happened was the fact that my dad went through this experience, and I was asking him, and he would never tell me what happened. So I always felt bad about that. And then when I joined the Marines, my dad got so mad at me. He said, "What did you do that for? You're crazy." And I'm going, "Well, you know what? You never told me about World War II. I don't know." So finally, at the end of the Vietnam experience, which, if you read the book, I don't know how I survived it, and I'm not a unique individual, because in 1967 and 1968, that was the highlight of the war. That's when they just kept on throwing the men in there, and no matter how many we ended up killing and wounding, they just kept on sending more and more.
Tet Offensive.
Yeah, I mean
Tet Offensive.
Oh yeah, especially for the Tet Offensive. So yeah, even before the Tet Offensive, they were bringing in divisions into the DMZ. They had crews that they went underground, and they built these huge bunkers, and we didn't even know that they were infiltrating through these bunkers. And then all of a sudden they pop out, and then they start attacking these Marine units. And I talk about this one battle in the DMZ. It was Operation Buffalo, and we were 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines. We were the newest weapon to defeat the Vietnam and the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese. We were on a helicopter ship, and so they would bring in a battalion this way, they'd bring in a battalion this way. But our battalion, we were 4 companies of Marines, 1,300 guys going in, and we would be the blocking force. We would go in and attack the ones that are trying to get away. That's why we ended up in so many different battles over and over. And every platoon lieutenant, every platoon sergeant, every squad leader I had was killed or wounded, and it went on and on because they just brought in new guys. And of course, unfortunately, some of the situations were where it was just almost impossible to think you could survive. When you're getting hit with artillery from the other side, they would shoot over from the other side of the DMZ, and they'd throw like 150 rounds at you in your battalion, right in your area. And then they'd mortar you after that. And then all night long they'd hit you. And then they throw these waves at you. And on Operation Buffalo, they completely annihilated a company. It was Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 9th Marines. And they were out for the 9th Marines because we heard that the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines had killed Ho Chi Minh's son, and so they had it in for the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines. And they became called the Walking Dead. Now, in my particular battalion, this happened, we got wiped out over and over, but there was battalions where they had to actually be in the DMZ, that's where their actual base was. And at the end of the 9 months of this Special Landing Force Alpha, we came off and then we went into the DMZ, and then we built a base right along the ocean, stopping the infiltration coming down from the DMZ. And some of the battles were pretty horrific. And the book is not so much about all these battles, but it's about human interaction with the people and the discovery of a new guy just not knowing anything, just being very naive, going into battle, and then getting shot at for the first time, and then realizations start coming in. And then as you're there longer, you start saying, what am I doing here? You're finding out that you're fighting the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong, and then who are the Viet Cong? That's the South Vietnamese. So I thought we were there defending the South Vietnamese and making this country, but that's not what happened to us. We ended up fighting. It seemed like the only ones who were really for us were the ones in the cities, and there was so much corruption going on and everything in the cities. So, as we started, and then all of a sudden, all these guys kept on dying, and then I started learning how to survive. And my interactions with the people were quite amazing. And so I write about it in the book. It's very touching. Bring your tissue, because there's some stories in there very touching. And then there's other stories that are, make you laugh. And I think that's what makes a really, really good book. So the reason I wrote the book, my kids came up to me and they said, so what was Vietnam like? And I didn't want to open up. I was like my dad. I go, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to tell people what happened, all those stories and everything. And I said, no, I can't do that because it affected me. I need to talk to my children. I need to let the story come out. So that's how I started telling the stories. And then as I was telling them, I realized this would make a good book. But I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the ability to write a book. But I'm going to write it. I kept on saying I'm going to write it. And then so I would just I'd remember stories, and I had a manila envelope, and I just kept on putting the stories in there over and over. This story. Oh, stories about tanks. Yeah, I'll put that in there. Oh, this battle, this operation. And then there's a lot of touching moments that happened. So one day some guy was saying to me, I said, I'm going to write a book. And he looked at me and he went, yeah, right. You're going to write a book. And I thought to myself, I guess I told people too many times I'm going to write this book. So I said I better either, or get off the pot. And so I did. I sat down and just said, I'm going to write a book. And I just sat down and just started writing my heart out and just kept on going all the way through until the end. And of course, then I was able to edit the book. And as I was editing, I didn't realize it was healing me at the same token, and that's what that article is about, is that it was so cathartic for me that I was writing this down, and after stories, I'd start crying like a baby. I couldn't get back to it for a week at least. That's why it took 3.5 years to write this book. And then after, once I had completed it and it was in a good form, then I started handing it to people and saying, they were my beta readers, people who were telling me, what do you think of the book? And I don't want any good stuff. I just want to hear criticism. I want you to tell me what I need to do. And so, this one would tell me that and this, and I took advantage of some of theirs. One of the best ones that I can't even tell you. So my original manuscript was about me and how I joined the Marines. I thought that would be pretty interesting, let people know that, I was in high school, girlfriend, all the thing, and then all of a sudden, the next chapter was Vietnam. And this friend of mine, his name is Johnny O'Brien, he said, Bill, you have an amazing book here. This thing is really amazing. But this is what I would do if I were you. And I go, what? He said, take that first part, just get rid of it. He said, either that or, you know, in your other chapters, you can refer to something. You know, I was at this school, or whatever you want. But he said, go right in, grab the people like this, and you want them to start reading the book. And I go, you're right, that's exactly what I want to do. So that's why I think the book is really so popular. People start to read it, and then you can't put it down. And it's a page turner. So I just want to let you know that I'm very proud to have that book. It's healing veterans and it's healing families. And how it's doing that as the people read it. I can give you some quick examples. One daughter said, I hope I don't get emotional with this. She wrote me an email, because there's a way you can talk to me in the back of the book where you can contact me. And she sent me an email and she said, I am so glad you wrote this book. She said, what I'm going to do is I am going to go and it's really touches my heart. I'm going to tell my kid I'm sorry. I treated him so bad. And to write a book and to have that happen is so touching. It makes me feel so good. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So then there was another guy, he said his brother was in Vietnam and he got overrun and got stabbed in the stomach with a bayonet. And he killed the guy and he was able to survive and come home, but he became an alcoholic. And you know, he said his life went straight downhill from there. And I kept on talking to him, talk about it, tell me about it, tell me what's going on. He would never open his mouth, and he said, my brother died 2 years ago, and I thought I would never have completion. And then I read that part in your book about being overrun. And he said that he had that acknowledgement. And I get these all the time. And it's very touching. It's very, very touching to have all these amazing things happen. And I just wanted to tell you about my book. And so that's about my book, and I hope you read it, I hope you enjoy it, and yes.
Are you ready for some questions?
Yes, please.
I don't want to interrupt you,
Yes.
but I want to say some more.
Oh.
So, you know, I am your age, and I was there at that cusp watching my high school and college friends being inducted or going to the National Guard or even so far as to say going to Canada.
Right.
It was a crucial time. We were on the cusp of, we'd been in Vietnam already just long enough to know we didn't want to go.
Right.
And the hell no, we won't go became louder and louder from 1968 on until we finally got out. At this stage in life, how I look at it is we knew we needed to get out. We knew we shouldn't be wasting all of these lives.
Right.
But it takes history and it takes experience to know, looking back, what it was. But it was the loss of so many. And I think because we went in on the heels of World War II and all the grandeur and the win, that we thought we could do the same thing there. But, you know, as you know, we continue to do these kinds of wars and we don't win. And we keep going into them and we don't win. And I have the same fears for
your children, your grandchildren, everybody. Sure, absolutely.
I'm glad you wrote this book. It's like a self-therapy.
Yeah, it was really great for therapy.
So I guess I was getting to the question, which is, you know, and I haven't read your book, but how do you feel now about having seen what you saw? How do you feel about what happened to this generation of young men?
So actually, you know, I realized at some point in time something was really wrong, why we were there in the first place, and then I come home and find out that we started the war on a lie, and you know, that's you know, that's what happens when you start a war on a lie and then continue it and say, you know, keep reaffirming that lie. I can tell you one thing, there was a total injustice done to the servicemen. I remember, this is going to be, by the way, I'm writing a screenplay also right now, and I have a person who's going to edit it in Hollywood, so I'm looking forward to having this be a movie. So the end of the book is going to be something like, the end of the movie is, I get off the plane from Vietnam, I'm landing in California, and I get off the airplane. Back then they had the stairs. They brought the stairs up to the airplane, they opened the door and you filed off, and then you walked on the tarmac into the airport. And I remember, I was just like, I never thought I was going to come home, and I came down the stairs, I broke the line, I got on all fours, and I kissed the ground. And I got up with the biggest smile you can't even imagine. I'm home, you know, and all these great, wonderful things I'm thinking. And I'm walking in the line, and I walk into the airport. And I wasn't in there 30 seconds when a college student said, "Hey, look at the baby killer." I remember looking, a smile went off my face. I remember looking at him and trying to figure out what I should do. Should I beat him up? Should I kill him? Should I just ignore him? You know, it's like all these things going through my head. And so what it's going to do, the screenplay is going to narrow in on this guy as like tunnel vision, and then it's going to go like into blur, and then as it comes back, it's going to be green, and I'm back in Vietnam in the jungle. So that's the way I want my screenplay to end, with this. You know, that's what happened. You know, and that's what the book is. I don't make judgments about anything. I do say, was it worth it, in the book. So when you say, how do I feel now? Well, I thought that we were going to remember and take this as a lesson, and unfortunately, we have to learn the lesson all over with the new generation of kids. And it's not, you know, it's not right. And it's like you can't, I thought you're supposed to learn from history. And so, yeah, that's the way I feel about it. Yes, sir.
Now, I'm sorry to be remiss, but I didn't get the information from my younger brother who served in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. And he just sent me, he served with the 4th Infantry Division, Central Highlands. And then the 101st, they're by Phu Bai.
Oh, yeah.
The DMZ, and he spent 13 months there, 70 to 71.
Right. Let me tell you a little about that. So back in 1967, the Marines were getting hit bad, and all of the they were getting wiped out, and they were bringing in new guys constantly. I mean, we didn't even know these guys. They were coming in. We couldn't even get rank because we didn't have people there long enough to say, "Oh, give that guy a rank." We didn't get medals. They didn't give medals in the Marines, not unless, you know, really something really ridiculously. I mean, they just didn't do it. So the point I was getting at was, what was the question? Oh yeah, so we were getting wiped out so many times that, you know, we needed help. They started bringing in guys from supply. They didn't know what they're doing. So finally they brought in the 101st Airborne. This is where he comes in. Was that your son?
My brother, yeah.
Your brother? That's where he comes in. And they came up, they have more helicopters in the 101st Airborne than the entire Marine Corps. So they were able to bring force and power that we weren't able to do anymore. So that's why the Marines started giving up part of the DMZ to the 101st Airborne, and God bless those guys. They had to learn a lot of lessons. The problem with the Vietnam War, and with most wars, is you take an individual and you say, you're serving 13 months or 12 months, or you're serving 6 months in Iraq, and then you're going to keep going back. Well, the problem with that is, you're not there for the duration. So you're fighting people who are there for the duration. They know their area. They know what they're doing. Just like me, when I went to Vietnam, I didn't know what I was doing. I was naive, and I started learning, and then I was really good at the end of my tour. Now it's my turn to go home. Someone has to replace me. Got a new guy to learn those lessons all over again, and how the booby traps are, and where to look, and you know, all the con games that the North Vietnamese and everything use. And unfortunately, you cannot fight the war that way. You got to say, we're going to win. I mean, and you're staying to the duration. That's the only way to do it. Otherwise, you're just wasting time. You're just killing people.
Just like my brother, he did time in Afghanistan. Was it worth being all those years there?
Yeah.
Lift all that military equipment, $88 billion in military equipment. Americans still are being held in Afghanistan.
And the problem with that is, it's the same thing that happened in Vietnam. I can still see the helicopters taking the last of the people out on the. So when that happened, poof, flashback for
People hanging from the planes, and they're falling just nuts.
falling. It was horrible. So yeah, that's the things, and unfortunately, you got a lot of civilians that get caught up in all that too. And but I just did a Zoom meeting, which became a YouTube video that we had just done, and it was 4 authors. It's 2 Vietnam guys, a gentleman, Abandoned in Hell, and my book on Full Automatic, and 2 Vietnamese boat people, very successful people, and they came over and they tell their story. And believe me, we had this great Zoom meeting, and it really became a very good thing altogether. But to hear the Vietnamese tell their story, that's what's really amazing. Another thing that I'd like to mention also is I went back to Vietnam 7 years ago to some of the battle sites that I fought. And I ended up going into the North Vietnam, which was really scary for me. And I landed in Hanoi and went to the Hanoi Hilton. And it was really amazing to go back to Vietnam. And these people love us. I mean, it's like, here we are 50 years later, and these people hate the Chinese because the Chinese are trying to take them over. So now they love us over there. And I went, so I got on a Marine Jeep in Da Nang with a bunch of other guys from my outfit that went with me. And we went down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, of which we were never on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And we seen where the B-52's craters were that was overgrown. And we get down, we go into the A Shau Valley, and when we're in the A Shau Valley, we're at the hill of 881, where all the big battles were fought. And I thought, oh, this is so surreal, you know, and it was a village out of the way of the tourists. And we pulled our Marine Corps Jeeps, and it was a brick building, and it was a 2-story. But we pulled the Jeeps right into their lobby, and that's how rustic this place was. And so my son was with, and he went out, and he comes into the hotel. We're all in the lobby drinking a few beers. And he said, Dad, you got to come across the street. We're going to have a jam session with the Vietnamese people. You don't speak Vietnamese. How are you going to do that? And he said, I don't know. I just put it together. And they said, come on over. So we all went across the way. And there was a whole bunch of these Vietnamese people. And it was a ground floor in a Quonset hut. And what it was is, it's a little way station for the Vietnamese when they're passing by. They could stop for a pop, a pack of cigarettes, or whatever they wanted. So it's a little convenience store. And of course they had a deck where you could actually sit inside there. And we all sat inside there, and we're playing and we're singing songs, and they're singing, you know, their Vietnamese songs. And I'm singing, you lost that love and feeling to them. And of course all the guys are singing it with me. And all of a sudden the guy next to me, he looked like an American Indian. He had this long black hair with, it was like spotted gray all the way down here. He looked like just a really American Indian. And he looked at our interpreter and he said, you know, and he started talking to her, and she like this, and she started going back and forth. And she said, this gentleman just asked me, why are you guys here? Why are these people, why are they here? And she said, well, these were the Marines that fought here in 1967 and 1968. And he looked at us and he said, I was the Viet Cong who fought here in 1967 and 68. And it's like, he also said, but I want to tell them, for me, that it was our countries that were at war. That if I had known them back then, we would still be drinking beer and having a good time. And we drank every beer in that little place. And we had such a great time. But that was so, and we do have that on tape. So that whole thing. Next thing you know, we're singing their Viet Cong war stories, and they're singing the Marine Corps hymn. So you know, it's amazing how, you know, these people are just normal people, just like you and I. And
did you see, do they still have their tunnels? in the jungle?
They don't need the tunnels now, no.
But they're still
But they're
there.
good at tunnels, that's.
The tunnels are there. I've been
Oh,
there.
really? Have you
I've
been
been
there?
there on 2 occasions. And of course, back in the day, they were very tiny because Viet Cong were very
Right.
tiny people.
Right.
But they've widened them now, so the larger Americans.
Really?
But I took my daughter and my son and myself, and they're called the Coochie Tunnel System.
Is that in the south?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Because I was up in the north in the I-40.
Yeah. No, it was down near Saigon. because,
Oh, gotcha.
They were within a mile or 2 of our main headquarters encampment.
Right.
So yeah, so the Coochie Tunnel System is still there. You travel there, you can climb through the tunnels, and experience that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what,
But what's amazing though, the system was so intricate and evolved. They had theaters down there. They had,
Hospitals.
hospital operating
Wow.
areas, trucks. I mean, this was just a
Yeah.
huge underground
Right.
facility.
right, right.
They, and then the guys that were sent in to clean those guys out, they were called the tunnel rats.
Right, all right.
And those are Army, it's Army
Right.
tunnel rats, not Marines.
Oh, they had Marines.
But did they?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
They'd
But they'd
send dogs and fish.
send these guys down there, you know, in these little tunnels going after the.
Right, right. I got a story about me going in a tunnel and walking. It's very interesting. It's nothing you really want to do is to go to a tunnel.
They'd send their German Shepherds down there first and then go with a flashlight and a 45.
Yeah, I went with a flashlight in a 45, and you can read about it in the book. I don't want to be a spoiler.
Tell all the little stories.
Yeah, right, right. And also, when you go back to Vietnam, it's like if you have $100, you're a millionaire, because $100 is 2,200,000 dong, which is their dollars. So, but if you're in a tourist area, they still charge you regular prices. But if you're actually dealing with the people, that's a lot of money. Most of, like I remember, a farmer used to make $10 a year, and that's what it made. So, and also there was, we went to Quezon where the Marines fought, and that's where the 101st ended up, was in Quezon. And we went to that site, and unfortunately, they don't tell, you know, they just want to be heroes on everything they do. And unfortunately, they had the battle for Quezon as they won and defeated the Americans, and the Americans ran out. And of course, we all know that we bombed them so hard that they left. Eventually, the Marines left Quezon altogether and got out altogether. So, you know, they still want, it's propaganda, and you'll find that with a lot of countries where, you know, they want their heroes to be, you know, so that they embellish their truth, so they don't have the freedom we do.
I have another question. You run into a lot of stolen valor.
Yes, I run into a lot of stolen valor, and I can usually pick them out. You know, every once in a while there's one that gets
What does
by
that
me.
mean?
What it means is someone said that they fought in Vietnam, and they brag and they wear the hat. and
Yeah, I've heard
they-
about
Well, they could pretend they're military of any
Yeah,
Or what?
I've heard
and they're not. And I had one guy that it's called Stolen Valor, and I was a commander of the Military Order of the Purple Heart. And, you know, I try to always help veterans that are in trouble and having problems, and a wife came up to me and said, you know, my husband was a POW, and, you know, he can't even talk about it, and sometimes he'll just leave in the middle of the night, and he'll go into like Grant Park, Chicago, and just hide and kind of sneak around until dawn, and then he comes back home. And you know, I used to be a VA assistant, so guys who couldn't talk to the doctors, they would talk to me. And I went to the doctor and I told him about it, and he said, Bill, ask the wife to go to his parents and ask them what about his service. And she did, and she got back to me, and we found out that He was never even in the military.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so, you know, that's stolen valor for sure.
I saw a program on TV a while back. They still come across unexploded ordnance or
Yeah,
shells.
Valor is when
Well, actually,
advertising.
so he just said that back in Vietnam, they still run across shells. Unfortunately, that's true. As a matter of fact, I have a friend who lives over there with a Vietnamese wife. And what he does is he tries to collect funds so that they can go out and get these experts to get rid of those.
In France, World War I, they're coming across unexploded shells. Some were even mustard gas.
Oh my gosh. Well, I wouldn't doubt that.
There's two guys on YouTube that study stolen valor, catch these guys. One of them is,
That's my pen.
he goes after Marines, and the other one is Navy SEALs.
Oh, yeah.
I got it.
Guys wearing uniforms
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's for discounts and
Right, they get the free meals.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about
it's
that.
for some sort of ego that.
Con artists.
Yeah.
Those are con artists.
Right.
I can talk to you guys for time. My brother found a Civil War cannonball in a tree on his property. He lives in Manassas, Virginia.
Oh my
I
gosh.
cut the tree up and sold the thing for a lot of money.
Oh, sure he did. Sure.
1864 or something.
Yeah, right,
What's
right.
the big money?
Wow.
You guys mentioned the 101st Airborne.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned some of the Battle of the Bulge. I think none of you were in it, right? You
Yeah.
were too young for that.
Yeah,
See,
that's,
I was alive when that happened. I was a kid, but I was alive. But the 101st, I believe, dropped into Bastogne, into the Battle of the Bulge, to
Yeah.
reinforce the Americans, caught on the sea.
And they called the
you might be
American
right.
forces the battered bastards of Bastogne back.
Yeah.
That's what they called them.
that's what they call
Am
it.
I think I'm right about that. Does anybody know?
No, I don't know for sure.
Yeah. My brother had the occasion to serve with the Rocks.
Oh, yeah, the Korean Army.
They were feared by,
Oh, yeah, yeah. They were brutal.
Korean Rock Marines.
They were brutal. They were brutal. So, you know, Marines, you know, and the fact that there was atrocities, it's not that I condone it, I understand it. When you go through a village and you leave the village, you know, and all of a sudden there's sniper firing and all of a sudden someone's dead, someone's badly wounded, and then you go through the village again and the same thing happens over and over. I don't agree with, you know, you have to figure out how to get them. And there's a story about it in the book. So I'm not going to be a spoiler about that, but.
We were even close to the Marine sniper. Was the best sniper in Vietnam.
No. We were a special landing force and it was a very special unit. And I don't like to say it's better than any other Marine unit. I typically fought more operations than any Vietnam Marine veteran fought it. So, you know, it's kind of a distinction that we find out. So when we have our reunions, they will often say at one of the dinners, all right, everybody with one Purple Heart stand up. And you got these guys that stand up, and everybody with 2 stand up, and everybody with 3 stand up, and here we are, we're standing up. And so in my outfit, it was unusual if you didn't get wounded. It was really
What were
unusual.
the occasions of your 2 Purple Hearts?
3 Purple Hearts.
What were they?
I got shrapnel in the arm when we were pinned down in a rice paddy. I got shrapnel in the last battle in the arm, and you know the deployment came over and picked it and wrapped me up. And the third one was shrapnel in the back from a grenade. I didn't even know I was wounded, and I just thought I was sweating a lot. And I put my hand back like this, and you know it's just loaded with blood. So yeah, that was my second Purple Heart, and that last one in the arm was, and everybody's dying. All right, so in my platoon, there's so many dead, there's so many wounded, and I get a little shrapnel. I almost felt like when I came home, I don't deserve those. But I didn't put myself in for it, the corpsman puts me in for it. So, yeah.
I had a couple cousins that were in Vietnam. I had a cousin who saw action. They take the BC up in the helicopter about 1,000 feet. They had to tell them right info. They chuck them out from outside. They're choppers.
Unfortunately, they did that as a technique to get information out of.
He also lets,
They kick out one and then they look at the other one and say, "You
before
wanna
that,
talk?"
he stared out East Germans by the Berlin Wall there.
Yeah.
He did that, to saw time over
We
there.
didn't do that in our outfit. We were pretty, we were a tough outfit. We were pretty tough, and yeah, we captured a lot. And unfortunately, we had to, you know. So all the people that I killed, I don't see their faces, even though that they were as close as we are.
That close.
I can't see their face. My mind will not allow me to see their face, but I can tell you that there's no guilt about that because they were getting ready to kill me. I mean, it was either him or us.
That's
me.
right.
And I didn't want it to be me. So it was like a defense mechanism, and that happened in every single case. And so, you know, I feel blessed that God has granted me that, you know, that I don't
There's
have
no
to look.
sin there. If somebody's coming to get you, you can, according to the natural laws of the universe, you can defend your life.
Right.
But the trouble with the police, you've got to call it correctly.
Right.
The police don't know if someone's just coming to injure them, or
Right.
if someone's coming to take their life.
Right.
The way you deal with that, if you do a lot of good deeds in life, that cushions you in dangerous situations.
Right. Now, I can honestly say this from the bottom of my heart, that I think God spared me to write this book. I totally believe it. I remember it was in my last month, I was getting hit with mortars so bad, and I thought I was going to die. And I was screaming in the hole, and screaming, "God, Jesus, help me, please, God, Jesus, help me." And the mortar stopped. Well, I had actually saw that mortar. I could hear the boots. I actually saw that mortar go in the air. I actually saw it come down, hit me, and blow me in a million pieces. And it's not so much that experience. What it was is the realization that at the imminent moment of my death, who did I turn to?
God.
God. And that taught me, oh my gosh, there is a God. And so I really do believe he believed that.
Right, no atheists in the foxhole.
There's no atheist in the foxhole.
I bet you still get nightmares to this day about it.
I used to get horrible nightmares. It was really good. I'd be right back and I'd wake up screaming.
They used to call it shell shock.
Right.
World War I.
And my dad had it pretty
So-
bad.
Bill,
Yes, sir.
our CDS man here has some questions.
Oh, no, we'll do that.
Oh, you don't want to do that?
Not now,
You don't have
but
questions.
Sure.
Later.
That sounds
So,
good.
he's going to have some questions for you.
That's great.
And I'm going to suggest the coziness of the back section for the book signing, and you
Yes.
continue just relaxing your Q&A as you are here.
Right.
So would that work for y'all to adjourn to back in the room?
That sounds wonderful.
With a